Kufman Aleph, 151. We're starting from a Mishnah. Mishnah is in the middle of the page, Machshichem al Tchum. I learned yesterday that you're allowed to go to the edge of the Tchum, which is as far as you can allowed to walk on Shabbos outside the city, which is 2,000 amas, for things that are permissible for you to do. You're not supposed to go there and wait there for Shabbos to end so that you should be able to do malachas that are asur immediately after Shabbos. That you're not supposed to do. If you can do those things on Shabbos, then you can go there on Shabbos as well and be ready for after Shabbos. And one of the things you're allowed to go there to watch your fruits. That was something you're allowed to do on Shabbos. You're allowed to watch, and then after Shabbos you can bring them back, because you didn't go there to cut them. You went there just to watch. Now we say that you're allowed to go to the edge of the Tchum, to Machshichem al Tchum, to attend to the needs of a kala, or to the needs of a funeral. If they need a casket or shrouds, the tachrichem. Nachri shehivi chalilim b'Shabbos, le'yisped ben Yisrael elam kein ba'omi makom karav. Non-Jew that brought chalil are like these types of flutes. What do they call it? A chalil today, recorder. The little things. So these were used for the wailing at a funeral. It's part of the went along with the crying at a funeral. So if a non-Jew brings these on Shabbos for a Jewish funeral, so the Jew can use it. Unless it came from very close. You have to see what this means. But the issue here is that it could be that he brought it on Shabbos from outside the Tchum. Rashi adds in the word Le'yispem ben Yisrael la'olam. Never. Because it was clearly brought for a Jew. They would never bring him for anything else. And who died? It was the Jew that died. Oh, really, if it means la'ilam, what about for a different Jew later on? Also brought for him. You can never use him. It's very strict. Now here it uses just a plain pronoun. It doesn't tell us for who. Made for someone, for him. A coffin, when they dug a grave for him. Who's the him? Whoever it is, it's a non-Jew. So then, Yikbar by Yisrael, a Jewish person can use that because it wasn't made for a Jew. In Bishvil Yisrael, Yikbar by Elamis. But if they did it specifically for a Jew, then you can never use it forever. It's things that were done on Shabbos. It's really a knas that we have in place. Tosfos argues in Rashi regarding the Elamis. Tosfos says that you can't use those flutes until enough time has passed that you would be able to bring them. Different than Rashi. Okay, we'll see in the Gemara. Tosfos may fit a little better. Rashi's going to have to answer some questions. My makam karav, we said that if the flutes came from a close area, then it's not a problem. This is, we're learning about this with flutes, but it happens to be, it applies to the, I don't know what can come on Shabbos, a magazine, Mishpacha, Ami, I don't know, whatever magazines you get that come on Shabbos. If they arrive on Shabbos, let's say in the mail, Kfar Chabad. So where did they come from? Did they come from out of the Tchum, or did they come from the city within the Tchum? So if they came from out of the Tchum, then you can't use it. You can't open it. You can't read it. And how do you open it? That's not a problem. You're allowed to tear things that get thrown away, plastic bag or anything. Ma'ami makom karav. What does it mean that these flutes, if they came from close by, then you're allowed to use it? If not, you're not allowed to use it. Rav Amrim makav karav mamish. literally close. Now, what Rav means is that you have to know definitely that it came from within the Tchum. Shmuel Amar Cheshinen Shem Mechutz L'Chaim Alanu. Shmuel says you don't have to know definitely. You just have to suspect that it could have come from close by. It was really right before Shabbos. It was right outside the wall. On Shabbos it came in. So Mimakav Karm Lano means it rested of Friday night right outside the wall, which outside the wall of the city is within the Tchum. It's within the area that you're allowed to walk. Okay, now there's two versions to this Gemara. We'll read it as it's printed by us, but I'm informing you that there's another version here where Rashi quotes it and the Gra takes out some pieces. The Gemara says like this: the Mishnah is accurate according to Shmuel, and then we're going to say that we have a brisa that supports Rav. So we have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel here. If you have to know for sure that the item that arrived on Shabbos was within the Tchum when Shabbos came in, Rav says yes, and Shmuel says no. Shmuel says you just have to suspect that it could have been within, as long as it could have been within the Tchum, then that's good enough. Rashi quotes an interesting thing in support of Shmuel, that if there's a basula, a virgin, that's pregnant, how'd that happen? So Rashi says, well, maybe she became pregnant from a bath. It's called Nisaber Bambati. Pregnant from a bath. And in other words, that we can suspect for possibilities, even without knowing for sure what happened, and she could still be mutter for a kayin. He quotes a Gemara in Chagiga. Okay. So, what's the support for Shmuel? That you can rely on that maybe it was within the Tchum before Shabbos. Diktani, it says in the Mishnah, if they made for someone a coffin and they dug a grave, covered by Yisrael, the Jew can use it. But 1 second, it was done on Shabbos. So, well, we don't know who that someone is. Alma misfeka shar. If it's a doubt, and it could possibly have been a non-Jew, that they did it, that the non-Jews did it for another non-Jew, then it's mutter. So hachanami misfeka shari here also. Just the fact that there's a doubt that it could have been within the Tchum, that's enough to make it mutter that you're allowed to use it. The Tani Kavasei de Rav, that was the Mishnah that supported Shmuel. Now we have a brisa that supports Rav. Let's say there's a city that has both Jews and non-Jews that live there, and there's a bathhouse that's functioning on Shabbos. So that means they were heating it on Shabbos. You want to go in immediately, Motzei Shabbos. Right after Shabbos, you want to go in. So yes, you say Baruch HaMavtal. And you want to go right to the bathhouse. So if most of the people in that city are Rav Nachrim, our majority are not Jewish, you can go in immediately. Okay, so far we don't have any proof to anything. Israel, if the majority are Jewish, you have to wait till it's enough time that they could have heated that water, because if it was done for a Jew, then you can't benefit for that. And since the people in that city are Jewish, so the bathhouse was heated for Jewish people, majority of the people are Jewish. So you have to wait after Shabbos. It's called B'chdei Sheyaser, the amount of time it takes to have performed that forbidden activity. Mechzel, let's say there's half Jewish and half not Jewish. North Miami Beach. So, what does it say over there? Yamtin ad kadei sheyecham chamen. You have to wait the amount of time it takes to warm the water. Well, sounds like a suffix. It's 50-50. Who did they warm it for? Well, could be the Jews, could be the non-Jews. And you have to wait. That means that unless I know for sure that it was done for Jews, unless I know for sure that it was done for non-Jews, the opposite. Unless I know for sure it was done for non-Jews, then it's prohibited. You have to wait the amount of time. That's a support for Rav. Rav said that you have to know for sure that the item was within the Tchum to be allowed to use it on Shabbos. So here we don't know for sure something, you have to wait. That's the way that Rashi in the first reading of Rashi, this is how it works. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi, there's another opinion. He says, Ba'ambati Ketana, if it's a small bath, in Yeshba Roshus, if there is a government official, Reichetz B'miyad, then you can use it right away, right after Shabbos, you don't have to wait. So my Roshus, what is this official that you're talking about? I'm Rabbi Yehuda, I'm Rabbi Yitzchak, Breder Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. Isn't that interesting? I'm Rabbi Yehuda. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak, Breder Rabbi Yehuda. Is he saying in the name of his son? Yesh badam chashav sheish la'asara avadim shemechamen la'yud kumkamin b'vasachas b'ambati ketana matalirchetz b'miyad. Talking about this type of person, it's Adam Chashav, an important person. He has 10 servants. They heat the water in 10 urns at one time, and they could heat it up right away. So if that's the case, then it could be that it was heated immediately after Shabbos. And then you're allowed to go in because this person was would be able to heat it up quickly. Maybe they heated it up for that person. He has 10 servants. They heated it up quickly, so it's possible that it was all performed after Shabbos. It still takes time to heat that. Okay, this was one reading of the Gemara, which the Mishnah supports Shmuel and the Brisa supports Rav, and we ignore the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. He doesn't tell us something in this context. The other reading of Rashi, in the way probably the girl wants to do, he takes out some words, is we skip that the Mishnah supports Shmuel, and instead we say that the Brisa supports Shmuel, and we don't have any text here that says that anything is supporting Rav. Now, how does the Brisa support Shmuel? Because it says that there's a possibility, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, there's a possibility that it was heated after Shabbos. We don't know that it was heated after Shabbos, but nevertheless, it's permissible. That's Shmuel's opinion. It says if there was potential for this to be done in a permissible way, then everything is permissible. Rabbi Yehuda supports the opinion of Shmuel. That's another reading of this Gemara. Okay. Now, it says, if they made for someone a coffin, they dug a grave, then a Jewish person can use it. But if it was done for a Jew, then you can't use it. We said that you're allowed to use it. You should really have to wait the amount of time that it takes to make it, because it could be it was done for a Jew. Clearly, it wasn't done for a Jew because the grave is in a public area, and Jews don't bury in these public areas. They use a cemetery. That's a good point. But that's only a good point for the grave. But for the coffin, how do you know if it's a Jewish coffin or not? The coffin was actually placed over a grave of a non-Jew. And then you want to use it now, then it's so clear, you don't even have to wait. Okay. Now, according to Rashi, there's a little bit of an issue here because Rashi said that these flutes you're never allowed to use if they were brought for a Jew. And then over here, we're starting to see that you are allowed to use things as long as you waited long enough. So maybe over there also you should say that if you waited the amount of time it would take for it to have come from this other city, which is out of the Tchum, then it should be enough over there also. So Rashi gives a difference. He says, by these flutes, it's muchach. It's clear, it's compelling that it was brought for a Jew because this is the only person that died. But when it comes to the bathhouse and these other things, it could have been that it was for the non-Jew as well. It's not as compelling. But over here, the only purpose that these flutes would have been brought would be for a Jew, so then you're never allowed to use it. Other things, you still have a little bit of an excuse why you're using it, so you don't have to wait as long. Taisus doesn't follow that approach. Now we have a Mishnah. You're allowed to attend to all the needs of the deceased. Sachin, put oil on him. But it probably means to wash. They would use oil like soap. That's what I'm assuming.
The last Mishnah.
Tell me that again. 1 second.
I have a question about the last Mishnah in this Gemara here, about the grave. Just trying to understand the logic of the Mishnah. When you're trying to teach somebody something, in principle, you would normally teach the majority case. You know, you can do this or you can't do that because it's something that the majority will always happen. But to go and say we're going to do a Kever Yisrael, and at this point, we have no clue if there's going to be a Kever available, because we're talking about if he did it for himself and you're lucky to see it and find it and he's willing to give it to you, then you can use it. So it's such Avamina to go and write that. It's mutter to go and bury someone if you go, and if. It's like, you know, in a reality situation, there won't be a Kever. And the reality is that you can't go and ask a guy to do it. And that's what it is. If a guy so it should have said, you can't, but if a guy did a kever for himself, you can use it. But to just go and say that you can't use a guy's kever because a guy doesn't dig for you. And so it's like the Gemara's way of explaining what the Mishnah is saying is like, and we don't even know if the option of this to ever happen. It's like, if you walk down the street and if you go in this and if you go,
right.
Right, said Allah is you can't. You want to go and add, but the odd 1 in a billion that a guy was dug up a hole and he doesn't want to use it and he wants to give it to you, okay. But to write a whole Mishnah without giving the main thing, which you can't, I'm not.
Right. Yeah. What you're saying is that the way the Gemara interprets the Mishnah, the way it qualifies the Mishnah is a big doichah. The Mishnah starts out, if you just read the Mishnah, you would say, if a non-Jew dug it for someone, we don't know who it is, so then a Jew's allowed to use it. If they decided not to bury whoever they dug it for in there, so then a Jew can go and use that. That would be what the Mishnah is saying. Then the Gemara says, actually not. It's referring to a grave that was in a place where Jews aren't normally buried, and also the coffin was put on that grave. And it wasn't really used, so you're allowed to go and take it. So it becomes like a big doifet. That's not really what the Mishnah. That's not the limitation of the Mishnah. I hear.
Part of the Mishnah is talking about real situations.
Right.
I hear. These are all things that you can do. So you're.
I hear.
I don't know. Logic is so backwards. I don't know on this one.
I hear. See, if you go like, the Gemara didn't throw in the Rav and Shmuel Machlekes, but if you go in with, if you approach this from Shmuel's perspective, then maybe you can say that you don't need this whole interpretation of the Gemara. And you can just say that maybe the Gemara was just learning it according to Rav. That could help us out. But it didn't spell that out. So. Okay, the Mishnah says that you're allowed to perform attend to all the needs of a mace. Sachin, they can put this oil on. Madichan, I say, they can wash the body. But they're not allowed to move the limbs, so they sort of have to wash it. They're obviously not using a cloth. So, I guess just pouring water. Maybe he's laying on a board. Shenktin esakar mitachtav. They're allowed to pull the cushion out from under him. That means, even though they're not allowed to move him, but they can move things away. And then he would go onto the sand, which would be better for him. It's more cooler. Shvil sheyamtin. Sheyamtin means that it should wait, but what it means is that it shouldn't get hot while it's waiting. Because if it's going to be on the sand, it's going to get cooler. If it's going to be on the cushion, it will be warmer, and that's not good for it. Could begin to rot. It you're allowed to tie the jaw of the deceased, not to move it up, but that it shouldn't drop lower. So they're allowed to secure it, not to tighten it, but to secure it that it shouldn't drop lower. Interesting example. Also a beam that cracks, that breaks, a beam in the roof. So you can support it with a bench or a bedpost. Not to lift it up, but that it shouldn't fall more. So you're not allowed to fix it because that would be baina, that would be building, but you're allowed to support it that it shouldn't collapse. The Gemara asks, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says the name of Shmuel. Student of Reb Meir followed Reb Meir into the Beis HaMerchatz because Ladiach Karka. He wanted to wash the floor in the bathhouse for Reb Meir. Amar Loi Ein Madichin. He said you're not allowed to wash the floor. Lasach Karka. He wanted to put oil down. Sounds like it's going to be slippery. Amar Loi Ein Tzachin. He says you're not allowed to put oil down. Now, what we're seeing from this, and the reason why this is a question, is because this implies that anything that you're not allowed to move, you're not allowed to put oil on. Since the ground I'm not allowed to move, I'm also not allowed to put oil on. Well, why did you say that a corpse, which you're not allowed to move because it's muktzah, you're allowed to take a pillow or a cushion from under it, but you're not allowed to move it directly. If you needed to move it, you had to put something not muktzah on it. Remember that? A child or a loaf of bread or something. Now, so why are you saying that you're allowed to put oil on it? We're seeing from this story with your mayor that you can't put oil on the ground. You can't, because you can't move the ground. You also can't put oil on this body because you can't move it. That's the question. Gemara says no. Karka bekarka mechlafa. There's a problem. It doesn't have to do with something muksa, putting oil. There's a problem with washing the floor or putting oil on the floor. That's because whether the floor is a dirt floor, whether the floor is a stone floor, they could get confused. A dirt floor has a real problem because you make the mashve gumas, ashvuye gumas. You'll straighten out the holes that are in the dirt floor, and that's considered construction. But in Baina and Shabbos building, in a stone floor, you don't have that issue. But because it's similar one floor to another floor, so we don't do it at all. But I'm not going to confuse a corpse with a floor. The whole problem was Ashvuya Gumes. It didn't have to do with muktzah. I can put oil on something that's muktzah. If the issue with the floor was muktzah, you could have put oil on it. The issue with the floor is that you're going to straighten out the holes in the floor. That's the issue.
Why would you put oil on a dirt floor?
I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be slippery, but it could be that this was an area where, I don't know how the bathhouses worked then. This is some spa area where they would put oil in, and I don't know. I guess you have to be there.
Maybe for fragrance, maybe it's smell.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Kol lasiyimai. We mentioned in the Mishnah that you're allowed to do anything, kol tzarchemes, all the things. Now, what are all the things that you're talking about? Lasiyah the Tanur Rabbanan. It's including what the rabbis taught in a brayso that says, Medin, klei maker, klei matechas, menichanal kresa. You can bring cold utensils, like glass, that are just chilling. Things that would cool off something that you would put it on. Or metal, and you're allowed to put it on the stomach of the deceased. So it shouldn't blow up, like it shouldn't bloat or something. You're also allowed to stop up the openings of the body. That means the mouth, also the lower part. So that the wind shouldn't get in. And Shlomo says in his wisdom, that the wind shouldn't get in. That the wind shouldn't get in. This is an introduction to what's going to happen here in this pasuk. We're starting with Ad Shalai Yirtak Chevel. Is that what we're holding? In Kehelis here, it starts off remembering the Creator in the days of your youth before the evil days come. And then it gives like a whole thing of what the evil days look like. This is the last chapter of Kehelis. It concludes Seif Davar Kol Nishma, but here it says, "Actually, Yirchak Chevel HaKesef Taretz Kulas Azav Tishaber Kad Al Mabur Naretz Galgal Al Abar," which means pasuk vav. It says, before the silver cord is loosed, that means probably snapped, or the golden bowl is shattered, or the pitcher is broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to dust as it was, and the Spirit of God gave it. It means you should return to God before all of those things happen. So what is that? What are those things? Before the silver cord snaps, this is referring to the spine. That's before the spine breaks. And the golden bowl shatters. Ze'ama is referring to the male organ. It's called gulas because it's a fountain. B'naretz hagalgal elabar, and the wheel falls to the pit. Zeperish, he's talking about dung, excrement. I'll spread the dung on your faces, the dung of your holidays. This is referring to the people that leave the Torah and they spend all their days with holidays, pleasures. So, why are we bringing all of this? We're talking about that the stomach blows up when after the person passes away. So you want to put something on it to keep it in place. Amrav Levi, Amrav Papi, Amrav Yeshua, Lacher Shleish Yam Kresin Nefkas, V'nefeles Lei Al Panav, V'Imeres Lei Tol Mashen Asatabi. Says after 3 days, the stomach bursts and collapses, and it says, take back what you've put into me. It's referring to what it ate, I guess. Okay, the Mishnah, now we have a Mishnah. It says, Ein ma'atzimen es hameis b'Shabbos. This means you're not allowed to close the eyes of a person that passed away on Shabbos, because even though it's very small, the eyelids, but nevertheless, you're not allowed to move any limb of the body, and that's moving the eyelid. So that's muktzah. And you're not allowed to do it in the weekday either, in mitzias nefesh, while the soul is departing. Because a geisis, someone that's passing away, you're not allowed to touch. Because that could cause the person to die quicker. Even though he's on his deathbed. But nevertheless, every second is life. So anyone that closes the eyes while the soul is departing is considered like murder. Someone that closes the eyes in mitzias nefesh is a sheifach damim. This is considered like murder. Mashal ner shekava. It's an example. A candle, a lamp that's going out. Shekava vahileches. It's going out. But if you put your finger on it, it's going to go out right away. So the lamp was still there. I know it was going to go out, but put it out too soon, and that's why that's murder. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Gamliel after the person passes away, you want to close the eyelids without doing it directly. Sounds like after he passes away. What do? So he says like this. There's no problem to do it directly, but for some reason this comes in. Unless maybe it's before he passes away. It wouldn't make sense. Why would you need to do that? Maybe because it's on Shabbos. Maybe that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to touch it. He doesn't want to move it. You're allowed to touch, you're not allowed to move it. You blow wine into the nostrils. And you put oil between the eyes, eyelids. And you grab the two thumbs, two big toes, and they'll close on their own. Well, interesting. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Gamliel if there's a child 1 day old that's alive, you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos. But David Melech Yisrael Meis, but if David, the king of Israel, is passed away, Ein Mechal Navas Shabbos, he can't be Mechal Shabbos, he can't desecrate the Shabbos, even though he's so important. But life is what's important when it comes to Shabbos. Tinik ben Yemechai, Mechal Navas Shabbos. If the child is alive and we're Mechal Shabbos, why do we do that? Because the Torah says, Chalav Shabbos Echad Kadesh Yishmer Shabbos Asarbe. You violate one Shabbos, and then you'll have all these Shabbos that will be kept afterwards because the child will live. It sounds like if someone's not religious, are you allowed to violate the Shabbos for them? Interesting, according to this logic. It would probably be that you don't know what the future holds. That would be strange. Okay, David Melech Yisrael Meis ein mechal alav. But if someone passed away, even David, he can't be mechal Shabbos. Kivin shemeis adam batel min hamitzvos. The person passed away, he's exempt from doing any mitzvahs. Find Adam Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Yochanan says. He quotes the pasuk. The Meisim Chafshi, pasuk in Tilim. In death he becomes free. What does free mean? Free means free. He becomes exempt. From performing mitzvahs. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, quote the Brisa. We quote the Brisa with Reb Shimon ben Elazar in it. Tinik ben Yomi ein tzarich l'shem min achol min achbarim. If there's a child that's alive, you don't have to protect him from the mice or from weasels. They're naturally, animals will stay away from even a baby. But such a powerful person like Eig Melech HaBashan, dead, you have to protect him from the mice. So it's the life that's the powerful part here, not the size of the body. Your fear, your trembling and fear will be on all the animals. As long as the person is alive, then his fear is over the animals. But once he dies, then the fear goes away. And the animals aren't afraid anymore. Amar Rav Papa says, Naktinan Aryeh Abeit Shrei Nafal. We have a tradition, Naktinan. We have a tradition that a lion doesn't attack two people. Why two? It says Meirachem, your fear, and there's a plural you there, right? Like the English, or like the original English word you, opposed to thou. Your fear will be on all the wild animals. It means two people the lion would be afraid of two people. Gemara says 1 second, Akachazina de Nafal. But it's not so. Sometimes a lion can attack two people. The Gemara says, well, that's a different reason. Who could the Rami Bar Abba? That goes according to the opinion of Rami Bar Abba. If the person behaves like an animal, then the animals aren't afraid of him. Shenemar Adam B'Yikar Bal Yalan, a person in his honor doesn't lay down. Nimshal Kabehemis Nidbu is compared to an animal. Means if he behaves like if he doesn't control his Yetzer Hara, his impulses, so then the animals won't be afraid. But if a person behaves properly, the natural fear that a person has will go on the animals. The famous story with Arachaim, that he was in a caravan, he wanted to stop for Shabbos, and he said, "You can stop, but we're not going to stay here with you." So they just dropped him off, and it was in the middle of somewhere in the desert, or wherever it was. I think it was traveling to Eretz Yisrael. It came from Morocco, and a lion came, and It said that he opened his. He uncovered his bris milah. He showed it to the lion, and because he was always careful never to follow the urges, so he was protected. The lion had a fear from him and protected him the whole Shabbos. After Shabbos, the lion allowed him to go on its back and caught up to the caravan. It's been quite a sight. Like we had Nebuchadnezzar Lavdal yesterday riding a lion with what was it? A snake, with the serpent, or as a noose, as a reins. Okay, Amar Reb Chanina, Asalishin bebayis yechidi. You're not allowed to sleep in a house alone. I don't know if this applies to a room. It means a house. This demon gets caught by this by the female demon. He sleeps in the house alone. Yeah. The Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Eimer Asay Ad Shat Hamatzah. Do tzedakah while you're still able to find people to do tzedakah. Matzilach, and you have the ability to do it. Vayitcha biyadcha, and you still have the two expressions of ability. One is you have the means. Another one is that you have the strength to go find people to give tzedakah to. Rav Shleimer Amar b'chachmasai. Okay, and this is now we start interpreting these psukim here in chapter 12 of Keheles. Shleimer Melech says in his wisdom, the Zecharas Beracha B'mei Bachrusecha, remember your Creator in your days of your youth. Ad Asher, I guess, Yava Yemei Ra, before the days of evil come. What is the days of evil? Eily Yemei Azikna, it's the days of old age. The Yigiu Shanim, in the years come, Asher Taimar, that you say, Eini Bam Chayfetz, that I have no desire, Eily Yemei Mashiach. That's the days of Mashiach. You have to remember the Creator before Mashiach comes. Shein Behem, because then there's no merit and there's no guilt. Rashi, very interesting. There's no merit, is because everyone's going to be rich. You won't be able to give tzedakah. That's what Rashi says. And like chayva, no one's going to restrain from giving tzedakah. Everyone's going to give. Sounds like everyone will share everything.
Amen.
Yeah. People have tried that sort of lifestyle, but I think it was a little too early. Doesn't work, those societies. Yeah. Those failed. Yeah, some people were more equal, right? So, okay, Pliga de Shmuel, but this argues on what Shmuel says. What's the difference between this world and the next? It's just who's in charge of the government. That's what Shmuel says. But the statement before was like, no, it's not just the government. It's not just who's going to be president and who's going to allow us to, if they're going to allow us to keep the Torah. That's what Shmuel says. That's what Mashiach is. Or at least the first step. The argument is saying, no, it's much different. Everyone's going to have everything that they need. There'll be no poverty, and there'll be, everyone will share. Okay. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, according to Shmuel, the poor will not cease. They'll still be poor, according to Shmuel. Yeah, there's a famous piece from the Maral in Netzach Yisrael explaining the concept of a Erev Tavshilin, where he says that you have two levels of holiness. You have Yom Tov and then Shabbos. And you also have two levels of the time of Mashiach. You have Ma'aseh Mashiach and Elam Haba. You have those two levels. But if you start cooking before Yom Tov, then you'll be able to continue cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. He says that's what it means, that you have to start doing tshuva, returning to God before the first level of Mashiach, and then you'll be able to continue afterwards, going from level to level. That's a very beautiful moral. I forget where it is. Lamed something, chapter 30 something in Netzach Yisrael. Tanya Rabbi Lezer Kappa says, person has to always pray that he shouldn't become poor. If it doesn't come for him, something funny about the language here. His son comes, and his grandson comes. Shenemar, as it says, I'll explain in a second, because of this matter. What it means is that the cycle of wealth and poverty can last 3 generations. So if a person is not isn't poor, so he should always pray that he shouldn't become poor, because poverty comes around in this cycle. And remember, I was learning this Gemara. It's just like 3 generations a person can stay wealthy. So there was one of my students was like going like this. It was a wealthy boy. It's like going like this. It was counting, and then he like turned very serious. Like, this is not, things are not looking good. Yeah, so it's a wheel of it's like a cycle how it goes.
In Portuguese, there's a saying about that: "Pai rico, filho nobre, neto pobre," which means the father is rich, the son is noble, and the grandson is poor. Uh-huh. Like wealth won't last if nobody who's working or caring about money. I'm gonna get past the 3rd generation.
That's the I guess the explanation for this is that the child doesn't bother working, and the grandson doesn't even know what he needs to do. So no. Okay. With old money, it doesn't work like that. It's only with new money. Old money.
Just put into a dynasty trust. You're okay.
For anyone needs advice. Okay. Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. Galgalus Shechayzer Ba'olam. It's a cycle that turns in the world. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, "Naktinan." We have a tradition. Haitzov me'Rabbanan le'me'ani. Yeshiva Bachar doesn't become poor. I was very surprised. We see that they are. Yes, but they still don't have to go collecting from door to door. Somehow they get provided for. Amalei Reb Chia leDebisu. Reb Chia tells to his wife, when the poor person comes, rush to give him bread, so that your children will also get. Are you cursing them? It says that it's a galgal. It's because of this matter. It means it comes around. And Rabbi Shmuel taught that this comes around. Tanya Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Yomer. Someone told the Chavetz Chaim about a shidduch that he was. So they said, well, first of all, she's very poor. So the Chavetz Chaim says, okay, that's one milah. Tell me more milas. He saw it as okay. Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi, says, give you compassion, and he will have compassion on you, will make you, multiply you. Anyone that has compassion on the creations, heaven has compassion on him. If someone doesn't have compassion on others, so they don't have compassion on him from heaven. Continuing the psukim in Kehelas. Means before the sun gets dark, or sets, and the light, zupadachas v'achaitim, this is referring to the light that's on a person's forehead, and the nose, which is a person's face, vayareach, and before this moon sets, I guess. This is referring to the neshama. This is while he still has a soul. This is a continuation of that introductory verse. That a person should remember his creator before the bad days come, before the sunset, all of that. Bakechavim and the stars, Elo alasasis. This is referring to the cheeks, or the jaw. The shavuav machar geshem, and the clouds return after the rain. Zumar einav shaladam. This is the eyesight shahilach achar bechi, which goes after crying. What does this mean? Gemara is going to say that the crying takes away a person's vision. And over the years, the person cries, vision diminishes. Amar Shmuel, Hay Dimasa. Shmuel says that this crying, Adaban Shnin Hadra, the eyesight can return up until 40. But it doesn't go back. It doesn't go back after 40. Rav Nachman, Hay Kuchla, the medicine that's used over the eye, they would have like a salve that they would put on it. They would use a tube with and had this eye salve, and they would put in like a Q-tip. Until 40 years, it heals. Even if you fill it up with a weaver's peg, even a lot, maybe it could retain the eyesight, but it won't heal it. It won't improve. It will stop it from getting worse, but it won't improve.
Rabbi, it's just interesting. Starting at age 40, people need glasses for reading. It's just interesting the age. It's a natural phenomenon.
The Gemara is talking about the nearsightedness.
I'm just saying that's naturally starts around 40. Most people get glasses.
Micah Mashmalan, what is this telling us? The Kamada Alim Mekuchla Tvei Mali is telling us that adding more of this eye salve is healthy. As we're saying, even if you add a lot, it still doesn't heal. That because adding a lot would heal, but because of the age, it doesn't. Rabbi Chanina Shchivali Brate. Rabbi Chanina, he lost his daughter. She passed away. He didn't cry. Amrla Debisu, his wife says, Tarnagolta, Pikas mi Besach. He lost the chicken. This was, it's like the daughter was just like, furniture or just like something that doesn't matter. You're not crying over her. Amalei Tarti, you want me to lose two things? Tichla, Ivra, I lost the daughter. You want me also to lose my eyesight? You're asking me to cry. Savala, Kihadam Rabbi Yechanan. He holds what like Rabbi Yechanan says, Mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Ketzarta. In the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Ketzarta. Sheish T'moisin, there's 6 types of tears. Shalish Yafis v'Shalish Yafis. 3 of them are positive, 3 are negative. Shal Ashan v'Shal B'chi v'Shal Beisakise. If it comes because of smoke, causes the eyes to tear. Or from crying because of mourning or suffering, or because of pain in the bathroom. So those are bad. Those are bad types of tears. Shel Sam, if it comes from potions that were used on the eye, or Shel Schoik, or because of laughing, the person laughs a lot and cries. Or Shel Peiros, or if it comes from fruits. Rashi's example is smelling mustard, causes him to cry. My wife's book, Onions Always Make You Cry. She wrote it with my mother-in-law. So that's healthy. Now it says, B'yoim sheyizu shemir abayis v'savsu. V'savsu is part of the next part. On the day that the guards of the house tremble. B'yoim sheyizu shemir abayis elo haksalim. This is the aksalim v'atzlois, the sides and the ribs. V'savsu anshe chayil elu sheikim. And the soldiers vow. This is the thighs. Ubatlo ateichnes, and the grinders are nullified, and they stop. Elu shinaim, that means the teeth. I guess the teeth fall out. Chashchu harois barubais, and people the watchers stop looking through the windows. Elu einaim, this is the eyes. Okay. This is all explaining those verses in Koheles, what it's referring to when a person gets old. Amalei Kesel Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, the Caesar told Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. We have a lot of conversations with Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, with important Romans and people that wanted to debate. My time lessons lay Be'avidan. Why don't you come to Be'avidan? Apparently that was a place where they debated. And the Tzedukim and Baitusim were there, other heretics. And they would argue about different verses. He said, why don't you come and join in that? Amalei Tur, Teleg, Sachruni, Glidin. The snow mountains that surround me have turned to ice. I guess it means he can't walk. He's getting older. Kalbui Leinavchen, the dogs don't bark. Tachnui Leiteichnen, and the grinders don't grind. It means that my voice isn't strong. My teeth aren't so good. In the Yeshiva of Rav, they would describe this, talking about old age, that without even looking for anything, you're searching. Without even losing anything, you're already searching. That means that a person that's old is bent over. It looks like he's looking for something that he dropped, but he didn't drop anything. So because they walked, they punched. Tanya Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma Omer, Tava Trei Mitlas. 2 feet are better than 3 feet. It's referring to the cane. They have those canes with many prongs. The Gemara didn't even think about that. 2 are better than 6 or something. Vaila lechada the ozla v'layasya, or lahada. Lechada, I can't tell if it's lechada or lahada. Woe to the one, it's either, to the one that goes but doesn't return. What is this referring to? Maihi? Rav Chizdi Yankusa, it's referring to the youth. Goes and doesn't return. The youth is like the crown of, oh, very good, that's good. The youth is the crown of roses. And savusa, but old age, klila de chilfa is a crown of thorns. Tanim shmei de Reb Meir, doik bekachi, grind with your teeth. Tishkach benigri, and you'll find that in your pace, in your walking, will give you strength. I guess it means to eat well so that you'll have strength. Be satisfied from bread and it will be good, and you won't see bad. Amalei Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel tells to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was a student of Shmuel. Shinina, we've had this before. It's either sharp one, it means buck teeth. Shari shakech, open up your sack, v'ayalachmecha, and put in your bread. That means eat. Adabar shnin michlamali, until 40 years, food is good. Mikan ve'elach mishtamali. After 40, drink is good. I don't know what type of drink he's referring to. Probably wine. That was the normal drink. So I guess you cut down on your diet, I guess after 40, is that correct? At this time? You're supposed to start eating less? So
well, don't ask him. I heard a whole breakfast that he put together. Don't.
Okay, Amalei Guzel Rabbi Shua ben Chana, Rabbi Shua ben Kar, actually. Let me stop by this Amalei Guzel because this is